All right. Hello out there, everyone in the tubes of the internet, and welcome to another exciting This Week in Space. My name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm your host with the most, bringing you all the astro weather that you need to navigate this week with some style and some grace. And we'll be looking at This Week in Space for the last week of November, November the 24th, 2025 through November the 30th, 2025. Before we get into the astrology, my name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a tarot reader, astrologer, and mental health counselor. I do astrological coaching. I give tarot readings. I give astrology readings. So if you are finding yourself at a crossroads, at a loss, dealing with some trying and turbulent times, hit me up. You can find me on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard. You can drop a DM over there and we can work out a time to meet, or you can find me through my website at campwizardcamp.com. Also, I will be co-facilitating a Dreaming Mysteries intensive with the brilliant Sarah Janes. Ariel Gutman is going to be there as well, and a couple excellent practitioners doing some intensive dream work. That's going to be in Epidavros, Greece on April 15th through the 22nd for the spring equinox. So if y'all are interested, you can go check that out over at the dreammysteries.org or check out Sarah Jane's Dreaming on Instagram to get some more information. But I just did one back in September and it was fantastic. So if you're interested in that, check out the dreammysteries.org and I hope to see you in Greece. All right, that is all the announcements that we have to kick off this week's show. So a little preamble for the astrology of the week. This is going to be a pretty Venus heavy week. So we're going to be talking a lot about beauty, creativity, aesthetics, values, love, and relationships, which are all Venusian themes. And we dive into all of the aspects that Venus will be making this week, I want to mention that we tend to put a lot of emphasis on our intimate partnerships and our romantic relationships in this culture. But I think Venus deals with all of our relationships, not just the romantic. So maybe consider the possibility that relationships can be non-hierarchical. And what happens if our friends and working relationships and collaborative partners and community connections or and family ties are no less important than our romantic or intimate relationships. And, there seems to be this kind of unspoken hierarchy in the ways that we think about relationships, with romantic partners at the very top, or sometimes it's family relationships at the very top. And then below that is friends, and then below that is colleagues, and then below that is sort of all the other relationships that we may find ourselves maintaining in life. And what happens if we kind of shift that perspective? And while all these relationships are different and have different needs, what happens if we do not value one over the other? Can we show up for each of these connections as unique and deserving of our time and attention? And I bring this in because as Venus makes multiple aspects this week, we have the ability to learn about ourselves and what we love and how we love from various sources through the medium of all of our relational connections. So don't discount the learning and potential for growth because you're not sleeping with somebody, all right? I think that the web of connection that we're in brings a lot of information and can activate sort of different parts of ourselves, which is an opportunity to learn. And sometimes the platonic friendships are less charged and easier to repair than intimate relationships or family ties. And so there's a lot of practice and a lot of learning that we can do through the maintenance and the information that we are gathering through all of our connections and all of our relationships. Also, um, because this is a pretty Venus heavy week, our attachment systems may be activated or revealed in various different ways as Venus moves through a variety of aspects, which can reveal various aspects of the ways that we feel safe in connection and the ways that we choose to give and receive love. Well, I think the moon deals with belonging and emotional connection at like a very primal level and has a lot to do with how our attachment system is formed. I think that these attachment bonds and our attachment system later in life plays out through Venus, through the arena of our relationships. Again, this is not just romantic partnership. Our attachment styles can come through a variety of different relationships. And when our attachment systems get activated in a friendship or a professional dynamic, it provides helpful information which can help us to notice and work with these parts of ourselves in ways that may be less charged than it would be in like a intimate partnership. And so this is a week of noticing what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and the ways that we find connection and the ways that we can work to strengthen these connections with each other and ultimately within ourselves. So that's my little preamble to kick us off this week. Starting off with Monday, November the 24th. That's today. So Venus in Scorpio will be conjunct Mercury, who's retrograde in Scorpio. This is going down at 22 degrees and 45 arc minutes of that fixed water sign. So here we have Mercury, which is our intellect and our ability to process information and communicate our understanding of the experiences that we are processing with the world around us and with other people. And so Mercury, this sort of mental faculty, is coming into a conjunction with Venus, who deals with relationships, aesthetics, what we like and what we don't like. Both of these planets are working through the deep, still waters of Scorpio. Venus is moving forward and will exit this Mars ruled sign by the end of the week. When they leave Scorpio, Venus will leave the sign of their detriment. Venus does not have a great time in Scorpio. They are sort of out of their element in several ways. And so as they leave Scorpio, and leave their detriment, they get a little bit more stability in the fiery sign of Sagittarius, which likes to have a lot of fun. And Venus also is down with fun, not so down with the like deep emotional processing that Scorpio requires. But we'll get back to that a little later in the talk. So Mercury retrograde moving backwards through the later degrees of Scorpio, through the last degree of Scorpio, and they will station direct by the end of the week at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So in Mercury's retrograde motion, they are rethinking, redoing, reconsidering, and revising the plans that we've made and the ideas that we have about ourselves and our interactions with the external world. Mercury's retrograde is sort of an invitation to listen to our own inner wisdom. And as Mercury retrogrades through Scorpio, they ask us to sit with sort of the deep feels and the emotional information that arises from our inner selves. As Venus and Mercury move up, moving in opposite directions, it's an opportunity to gain some information about what feels right for us. We get to rethink and reimagine relational structures and beauty ideals, as well as a reconsideration of our value system. That is what we like, what we don't like, what we're attracted to, what we're repulsed by. We may get a little bit of insight into some of the emotional issues that have been bubbling up in Scorpio and that we have been called to sit with or wrestle with, as the case may be, as Venus has traversed the fixed waters of Scorpio. So this may be a time that we enter into relationship conversations or return to discussions that have already been brewing. We also might get some awareness of the emotional patterns that are underlying some of our relational structures and to notice some of the through lines in order to revise some of the ways that we choose to do relationship or how we communicate in relationship or how we perceive a relationship to function. This transit provides an opportunity to bring our heads and our hearts into sort of more of an alignment. And this might not be an active practice. You might not be able to be like, head, talk to heart, heart, listen to head. You know what I'm saying? It might just take some noticing. and some awareness and opening a little space for that communication to take place. And we can consider if we operate from a logical thinking place in our normal lives or from a feeling emotional place, and what it would be like if we could open up a better line of communication between these two aspects of ourselves. What would the head and the heart say if they could talk to each other? What would it look like if we could bring them into a better sense of alignment? Can we hold both the head and the heart at once without privileging one over the other? And consider what kind of information can arise when we allow them to come into relationship with each other. And these may be things that we want to sit with to kick off this week and to see if we can approach this moment with some curiosity, which is a pretty mercurial word. And we might even be surprised by what we find out. Also, I find with Mercury conjunctions, there can be some insight that arises. And so, as Mercury comes into this conjunction with Venus, we might get a flash of insight or a little bit of information or some awareness around how our attachment system is activated or how it functions in our lives. And so, if we again open a little space of awareness and just notice what is coming up. Am I feeling activated? Oh, that person didn't text me back. What is going on here? Oh, I'm feeling like I need to move away from this thing because they're getting too close. What is going on here? And again, this isn't in necessarily a romantic partnership. We can also find the ways that our attachment system functions and the ways that it becomes activated and the ways that it naturally operates through our platonic connections. And so, as we bring awareness to this part of the self, the ways that we do relationship naturally, the ways that we are drawn towards or repelled by or sit in the relational structure, we can notice, okay, how is this functioning? What is coming up? What information is being revealed to me? And can I work with this? How can I be with this? How can I bring a little bit of awareness and shine a light on this? How can I notice this a little bit? And what might I need in this moment to feel a little bit more secure, to feel safe? Does this involve a conversation? Does this involve sitting with myself? Does this involve just being with these feelings? And again, can I open up this line of communication between the head and the heart being like, oh, I want connection, and the head being like, more, or no, 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 or yeah, this is chill. You know what I'm saying? So just allowing yourselves to open a little space to just notice what is arising, because I think that there can be really good information here that then we can utilize and put into practice as we move forward. So that brings us to Wednesday, November the 26th. We have Venus in Scorpio, trine Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, as well as Venus in Scorpio trining Saturn, who is retrograde in Pisces. So we get this grand water trine between Venus and Jupiter and Saturn, who are both retrograde. Venus will come into their perfect their trine with Jupiter a little earlier in the day at 24 degrees and 46 arc minutes. And let me scroll down to this. And then they will trine Saturn, who's retrograde in Pisces, at 25 degrees and 9 arc minutes. And we're just going to talk about both of these together as a whole complete package of a grand water trine. And so these three planets are kind of in collaboration in the water signs. And so we have a kind of free flow and the harmonious relationship, providing a lot of support in the element of water. So dealing with the unconscious, dealing with the emotions, dealing with the heart. And so as Venus moves in to perfect their grand water trine with Jupiter, who is exalted in Cancer, and Saturn in Pisces, which happens to be the sign of Venus's exaltation, there is this interesting extra layer of support. And while Venus is in detriment in their current position in Scorpio, they're getting some real kind of emotional support from Jupiter and Saturn. Like I was saying, a trine is a harmonious aspect where planets are in communication and can easily collaborate with each other. And so Venus earlier in the week, today, Monday, coming off this insightful conjunction with Mercury, may have some new information about what's important in relational dynamics or aesthetic principles. And also some information about what they might like, what might bring joy, what might bring a little bit more ease and pleasure into life, as well as what values they want to honor as they move through the final degrees of Scorpio. So as Venus comes into this flowing water trine, they can both give and receive from Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn provides stability and structure, while Jupiter offers wisdom and faith, as well as a sense of optimism. And so as Venus trines Jupiter, it helps us to take events and turn them into experiences in our sort of internal system, which from those experiences, then we can derive meaning. And this is one of Jupiter's superpowers, is it helps us to make meaning and a cohering meaning from the events and experiences that we go through in this life. And the sense of meaning helps us to understand our relationship to ourselves and others in a more insightful way. And so, as we develop a sense of meaning around our interactions and relationships, it helps us to recognize what is in alignment with our values and what is not. And we can consider, oh, like this event that happened, this experience that I had, what is the meaning of this? And does this really align with what feels good to me? Or do I want to move away from this? Again, looking at art or aesthetic qualities, we can sort of derive meaning and notice how that feels in ourselves. Oh, when I look at this thing, I feel good, I feel uplifted, I feel gross, I feel heavy. What is the meaning of that? And how do I use that meaning to move forward in a way that gives me more of what I want and less of what I don't want? And so Saturn helps us to show our limitations and assists us in setting boundaries. And boundaries are vital for healthy relationships because we can't have a good yes without a good no. As we sort of develop this understanding of the meaning of things and what we are drawn towards and what we want to move away from, Saturn really helps us to demarcate those lines and those boundaries and provides us a structure where we can say, that's not really what I want. That is, I've been through that, or I've seen that, or like I'm not attracted to that, or like that doesn't feel good. So I need to set a boundary here, and I want to move towards the things that do feel good. And so, yeah, and as Saturn helps us to recognize and set these boundaries, it allows us, it really supports us so that our relationships can function in generative ways that allows us to be in more or better alignment with our core values and not really betray ourselves. Jupiter also helps us to expand these boundaries so that they and the limitations that we perceive for ourselves and what we believe can be possible in our lives and our relationships. So Venus, having done this deep work in Scorpio, has some information around the deep psychological and emotional structures that form the undercurrents of our relational life. Saturn helps us to structure this understanding, and then Jupiter helps us to expand these possibilities. Jupiter also helps to prevent our boundaries from becoming too rigid, too fixed. Jupiter helps us to trust ourselves and our inner knowing so that we can expand our capacity to show up for our relationship. And so while Saturn helps us to establish boundaries, Jupiter is like, okay, can these shift? Because boundaries don't need to be rigid. One thing that I've heard that I really love is that boundaries are sort of like the place where the ocean meets the shore. We can think about the tide coming up and going back, or waves coming up and going back. And, you're sort of standing on the shore and you're watching this. And as the water comes up, you can move back. And this is sort of, and as the water recedes, you can move forward. And this is kind of how boundaries function. And, that can be fine. They can be changeable. They can be malleable. They can be mutable. They can shift to fit our needs in the moment or in a specific day or in a specific time. However, we know when the water comes up and our socks get wet. That is a real feeling, and you're like, oh, a boundary has been crossed. My socks are wet. I'm not happy. And then I think Jupiter allows us the wisdom and also the sort of faith and optimism that if that's the case, we can deal with it. We can have a conversation, we can renegotiate a boundary, we can renegotiate this structure that doesn't have to stay fixed and rigid, that it can be expanded and contracted as we need. And if that boundary is crossed, that can be, yeah, dealt with and renegotiated in a way that supports us and ideally supports our relationship. So while Saturn can also help to prevent us from abandoning ourselves or moving out of alignment that Venus sort of has revealed to us or is revealing to us through the understanding of what we like and what we don't like in our lives. And so I think about Saturn as this sort of anchor, this kind of heaviness or weight, which, can be the idea of heaviness seems, heavy and something that we don't like, but we can consider what is the value of weight in this system or in this situation? What is the value of weight in relationship? Something that anchors us, something that holds us down, and ideally something that helps us to stay in alignment and stay in integrity. So Saturn also helps us to have a scaffold that allows us to structure our relationships so that they can feel consistent and help to provide what is called a secure base in attachment theory. And the idea of a secure base comes from, early childhood development and parenting styles. And the sort of idea of this is that having a caregiver who is consistent, who shows up for a child as they are developing, the child is able to go off and explore and have adventures and then come back and check in with their secure base, with their caregiver, who, ideally shows them appreciation and curiosity. And so the child knows, okay, I'm safe to go out and explore because this person is going to be here. They got me. And so the child can go off and explore, fall down, skin their knee, come back, and there's the caregiver who is consistent and who is able to show up for them and help them deal with the pain of skinning one's knee. And then this also gets translated into interpersonal relationships and romantic relationships by, feeling secure that the person that we are connected with or the people that we are connected with who are going to consistently show up for us so that we can go off and live our big, beautiful lives and then come back and share, oh, this was my experience, and not be rejected, not be ignored, be met with curiosity and appreciation. And I think this trine with Saturn to Venus, I think that Saturn can help us to sort of develop that sense of consistency, which doesn't necessarily happen automatically. And if somebody has an insecure attachment system, it takes some work to develop the trust that it's going to be okay. I'm not going to be totally consumed and I'm not going to be totally abandoned. And this is like internal work that we get to do throughout our lives. However, we can consider what are the sort of factors that I might need to feel secure in this relationship, whether it's a romantic partnership or a platonic friendship. And then Jupiter allows us to expand our ability to trust. Jupiter brings a lot of optimism to the party and to have faith that we can take risks and follow our bliss and be able to return to the secure structure that we have developed and then put in that and that we have put in the Saturnian work to create. And in this way, we have this sort of grounding element of a relationship as well as the trust that we can go out and explore our lives and continue to expand our lives while being able to return back to that sense of connection and safety and that anchor that Saturn provides. So, on another level, Venus is trine to Jupiter wants us to chill. When Jupiter and Venus get together, especially in a supportive aspect, they're like, order all the appetizers, let's have a party, let's socialize. I don't want to do any work. I just want to feel good. And, they want to be in connection and they want to be social and they want to have a good time. Whereas Saturn, when they trine Venus, kind of helps to motivate us to do the work that we love. And Saturn is about dedication and commitment. Doesn't really like to chill that much. I don't think Saturn really knows how to chill, but they do like isolation and solitude. So during this trine, we are finding kind of a harmonious balance between what feels good and then the work that we are called to do. And ideally, we can bring this sense of joy into the work that we're doing and try not to work too hard, not to overburden ourselves, but to show up in a way that feels supportive and joyous for us. And this might show up in areas of relationship as well. And this transit, this trine asks us to consider the work required to have more fun and to feel more at ease in our relationships or in our lives, and the things that are important to us. And maybe this is having conversations or showing up in certain situations or developing and deepening trust so that our relationships can flow with more ease. This also calls us to do the work that we love, while remembering that sometimes it requires good boundaries to allow ourselves time to take it easy and really enjoy the Venusian and Jupiterian aspects of our lives. And sometimes the meaningful work is just allowing ourselves the space to chill and recharge. It's important to remember that experiences of joy help us to build resilience. So, being able to take it easy and not over exert ourselves or commit to too many things and to go to a museum or to take a walk and to take in beauty, this can help us to build resilience, which allows us to show up in the harder situations and the stuff that we might not want to do in the future. But having these experiences of ease and joy can really help support us as we are called to do that stuff. Because, eventually at some point we're going to have to do something that we don't want to do, or life is going to get hard. And having the experience of joy, I think, really supports us in navigating that. So, moving along to Thursday, November the 27th, which is Thanksgiving in America, we have Saturn stationing direct in Pisces at 25 degrees and 9 arc minutes. So let me just give you all an overview of Saturn's retrograde journey. Saturn stationed retrograde on July the 12th at 1 degree and 56 minutes of Aries. And so we can think back to the summer and some of the feelings that we might have been feeling as Saturn reversed direction. And especially folks who had planets or points at the very early degrees of Aries, this probably had a larger impact on you because when a planet stations direct, it kind of grinds to a halt and posts up on a certain degree for an extended period of time. And the further out the planet is, the longer it will post up on that degree. And then Saturn retrograded back into Pisces on September the 1st. So those of y'all with Saturn in Pisces, this began the sort of last gasp of your Saturn return. And then they stationed direct today on the November the 27th at 20 degrees and 42 arc minutes. And then they will re-enter Aries on February the 13th of 2026, thus ending the folks with Saturn and Pisces natally, their Saturn return, and beginning the full-on Saturn return for those folks with natal Saturn in Aries. And then Saturn will also form a conjunction with Neptune on February 20th of 2026. And that's kind of a big deal. That happens about every 36 years, and it tends to bring some collective and global shifts. The last time we had Saturn Neptune conjunction was back in Capricorn, and that was right around the time of the Tiananmen Square massacre and the fall of the Berlin Wall. And Saturn and Neptune got within like 13 minutes of exact conjunction back on July 12th or 13th. And then when Saturn stationed retrograde, and then they've been separating. And then on February 20th, both Saturn and Neptune will be in the 0 degree point of Aries, and they will complete that conjunction. So something to look forward to, maybe. I don't know. It's weird and wild times. I'm not going to dwell too much on Saturn stationing direct. Just to say that, again, Saturn deals with responsibility, austerity, commitment, maturity, as well as authority. And, as they move retrograde, these kind of concepts become internalized. And the retrograde of Saturn, I think, has a lot to do with how the internal structures that we are creating and operating in, as well as the things that we choose to commit to and the dedication to ourselves or our internal worlds. And I think that the sort of work that we want to do in the world, the things that we want to make real, get kind of revised and reconsidered and reimagined through Saturn's retrograde process. And now, as Saturn stations direct, this is an opportunity. And as they begin to move forward slowly but surely, this is an opportunity to sort of externalize some of the inner work that we have been doing since the summer and to put into practice the things that we have kind of chosen to commit to or to dedicate to with our precious and finite energy. And Saturn is like, okay, cool. You want to make this real? What are you willing to do in order to do that? And another sort of component of this is I think that Saturn really deals with authority. And we are sort of told that authority is external. We are trained that authority is parents, it is teachers, it is principals, it is police, it is politicians, a lot of P words in the authority category. And, as Saturn moved retrograde, this was an opportunity to think about our own internal authority. How do we show up as the authority for ourselves? How do we show up in the authority of our lives? And what does it look like to reclaim authority from all of those places that we've outsourced it to? Oh, I can't do this because they are taking care of that. Or I'm just going to trust the politicians to take care of that. Or, I can't do that because the teacher said no. And, how do we sort of reimagine that and reclaim some of that authority to give us a little bit more agency in our lives? And, Saturn is also the external structures and limitations that we bump up against in our worlds. And so while we might not be able to do whatever we want to do whenever we want to do it, how do we also develop or reclaim some of that authority so that we can develop a greater sense of agency in our lives and still working within the societal frameworks in order to create the reality that we prefer? So that brings us to Saturday, November the 29th. We have Mercury stationing direct in Scorpio at 20 degrees and 42 arc minutes. And thank God. I don't know about y'all, but this Mercury retrograde has been incredibly spicy for me, and it's been a bit of a challenge. And I think Mercury retrograde will hit people's charts in different ways. And sometimes it's like, yeah, whatever, that was mildly annoying. Sometimes it was like, I didn't really notice that. And sometimes you're like, oh my God, what is happening? Why? Make it stop. And I kind of went through one of those, which was interesting for me in the sense that, I think at the heart of Mercury retrograde, like the whole idea of it is things don't go according to plan. And so we are forced to sort of sit with ourselves and to recognize and acknowledge the underlying feelings that are motivating a lot of what's going on in life. That when things do go according to plan, we're sort of operating unconsciously because it's like, oh, yeah, I made this plan, I'm doing it, things are going good, we're moving right along, and we don't really think about what's happening under the surface. And then, when we get stuck, when the flight is delayed, when we miss the bus, when, electronics break, when we can't operate in our normal way, we're sort of forced to sit with ourselves and all of those tumultuous feelings that bubble up from the surface. And that is uncomfortable AF. However, I think it gives us really good information and it shows us where these sort of knots in the system are that ideally, by bringing awareness to that, we can begin to work on them and begin to untangle them. And so we're not just like operating on autopilot and not really addressing some of the deeper issues or the feelings and thoughts that are sort of motivating how we move through the world. And so let me just give you a little overview of Mercury's retrograde. They first entered Sagittarius back on October the 29th, and then they stationed retrograde on November the 9th at 6 degrees and 51 minutes of Sagittarius. Then Mercury retrograded back into Scorpio on November the 18th, and now they are stationing direct at 20 degrees and 42 arc minutes of the fixed water sign of Scorpio, and they will remain in Scorpio until December the 11th when they re-enter Sagittarius. And so again, Mercury's retrograde is a time of inner reflection. During the retrograde, things don't go according to plan as much as we want them to, which causes us to really sit with ourselves and the feelings that become activated when we deal with these miscommunications or misconnections or disruptions in the normal schedule. And so during this Mercury retrograde, we got two different flavors of the retrograde. It began in Sagittarius, where we were perhaps rethinking ideas of truth and belief system, which informs how we create our map of the world and the philosophies that we hold about life. We're also called to reconsider what we are choosing to quest after based on the revisions of this worldview. And so, as Mercury re-entered Scorpio, we were called to rethink the emotional bonds that we are maintaining, as well as a reconsidering of issues of connection and intimacy, and also safety. As Mercury did their retrograde thing, we were kind of forced to sit with the feelings that arose and to try and gather internal information from the ways that the disruptions might have activated our systems and the feelings that these missteps produce. And so, again, as Mercury like did some deep dives during that retrograde in Scorpio, I think it was a call to like really re-examine the deeper emotional feelings that have been activated by things not working as they should or as we planned. And this can bring up a lot of feelings, especially when these are dealing with matters of safety or matters of the heart, which I think, sometimes these things are intertwined, coming back to attachment system, because we can kind of outsource our safety onto somebody else. And if they are not there or not available, that can bring up some deep safety concerns, as well as, electronics breaking or cars breaking or, money draining. These bring up like a lot of like safety and survival concerns. And although these safety feelings are incredibly dysregulating, what is it like to sit with them and notice, okay, what is under this? Can I be with this? Can I sit with this? What is it like to untangle this? Not so I am always going to be safe, but how can I provide a sense of safety to myself within these sort of moments where my survival instincts get kicked on and I go into fight, flight, freeze, collapse, And so one thing that I want to say about Mercury retrograde, Mercury is a trickster, and they tend to bring us where we need to be in ways that we never imagined that we would get there. And again, this can be very frustrating because it requires a deep degree of trust in a planet or an archetype or a god or an imaginary idea. And it's a lot easier to trust something that you can hold in your hand and be like, I got this, it's cool. I have my Laura Palmer coffee mug, everything's all right. When it's like, okay, I am trusting this imaginary image or this archetype or this symbol, like, I don't believe this is gonna work. And so, an example of how Mercury brings us to where we need to be comes from the Iliad, Homer's Iliad. And there's a section in it where, as Troy is being sacked, Priam, who's the king of Troy, is trying to go out and do a deal with Achilles to get the body of his son Hector back. Achilles, who through most of the Iliad, just goes into a killing frenzy. Has finally defeated Hector and now is celebrating by dragging Hector's lifeless body around the city every day in his chariot, which is incredibly disrespectful and is creating a lot of emotional activation for Priam. And so Priam wants to leave Troy to go make a deal to reclaim Hector's body. And so um, Priam, everybody's like, dude, don't go. This is a bad idea. If you're captured, we're done for. They're gonna kill you. You're really putting everything in jeopardy. And Priam's like, I don't care. This is the most important thing to me in this moment. And so Priam gets all suited up and gets into a chariot, which unbeknownst to him, is being driven by Hermes, Mercury. And they set off in the chariot, and Priam's like, okay, Achilles, I heard from the scout that Achilles' tent is that way. And the Mercury, Hermes, the chariot driver, is like, what? Sorry, can't hear you, takes a left. And Priam's like, no, the other way. And Hermes is sort of bringing them in this zigzag pattern all over the place. Prime doesn't know what's going on, like gets that survival fear activated. Oh my God, what's happening? Am I being kidnapped? This dude's going in the wrong direction. The cab fare is going to be exorbitant. I don't know if I have the cash for this. But what Mercury does is sort of brings him in the circuitous path in order to miss all of the guards and sentries, and no one is able to recognize Priam so that he is able to arrive safely at Achilles' tent and to negotiate a deal to get Hector's body back. And I think that this is the way that Mercury functions, especially during the Mercury retrograde, is things don't go according to plan. And that brings up a lot of fear and insecurity and frustration. But if we are able to trust that we are being brought to where we need to be in order to accomplish what we need to accomplish, then it can create some ease in this process. And again, this takes putting a lot of faith in something that is invisible. However, I just want to offer to you that Mercury is not invisible and they operate in many ways in the physical and visible world through these communication devices that we are using. For example, this is mercurial through the marketplace. These are mercurial places at the crossroads. And so, although we don't see a youth with winged sandals rolling up, their representation exists in this physical world in many places. And something that we may want to just be aware of is like, oh, do I see these symbols and signs and significations of this messenger, of this guide around me? And if I do, maybe I can trust that I'm being brought to where I need to be brought to. And that maybe I don't have to do it all on my own. And maybe I can just relax a little bit and allow myself to be carried, even though this doesn't look like how I wanted to get there. Even though I think the tent is over there and I'm being brought this way, maybe with a little bit of trust and if I don't struggle too much, I can be brought to the place that I need to be at and arrive when I need to get there, which is kind of important. So, Saturday, November the 29th, we have Venus in Scorpio opposing Uranus in Taurus, Uranus retrograde in Taurus. This is going down at 29 degrees and 5 arc minutes. And so Uranus is a planet that brings sudden, unpredictable events. It is a signature of liberation and a desire for freedom, as well as the striving for kind of imaginary, idealized vision. Uranus seeks to break away from norms and traditional structures and to create something innovative and authentic. This sounds great. However, Uranus can blow up structures that are working because it feels frustrated or bored. And once Uranus starts tearing things down, it's like, whatever, that thing, that thing, that thing. And it happens kind of suddenly and unpredictably, which can be a little dysregulating because as human beings, we really like consistency and we really like what's going to happen next. And Uranus can also take the position that things that are good enough are worthless because they don't meet this sort of idealized vision, which may never actually be attainable. And so we might find ourselves blowing things up that are actually okay because they are not good enough. And so something to consider is what is good enough and what is enough. So We can also consider what happens when this planet of disruption and sudden change opposes Venus, the planet of love, beauty, relationships, and values. We may feel that relational structures are too confining or that our everyday lives lack aesthetic experiences and joy. And we may seek to create feelings of novelty and excitement that can stimulate those parts of ourselves that feel kind of trapped in our daily routine. And I don't there's nothing wrong with this. And also, this transit is not going to last for a long time, a day or two. So we can maybe notice that desire for novelty and excitement without having to blow up our entire lives. Um, During this time, we might also be drawn to unusual experiences. We may try to seek out new experiences of beauty, new aesthetic experiences, which can help shake us out of our normal routines or whatever rut we find ourselves in. We also might be interested in novelty and new forms of recreation or out of the box forms of entertainment. And so this would be a great day to go see an art film or to go to a reading or to go to a museum to try new aesthetic experiences that you might not be doing every day. This is also a good time to make art or do something outside of your normal routine involving aesthetics and creativity. And this may help us to shift our perspective of our lives in a helpful way, bringing in new kind of beauty, new excitement, and new enjoyment. And this might feed the parts of ourselves that are seeking something new and out of the box in everyday life. And while we don't have to blow up our normal routine by experiencing something new and beautiful, we might find ways of integrating that more into our lives. And so we can consider how do we find excitement in ways that are supportive to the path that we are on and help us to expand our perspectives without destabilizing the structures that might already be supporting us. This is also a time where unresolved relational tension might surface and need to be dealt with. But, we've been doing all this Venus work all week, so you'll be ready for it. I guarantee you. We might also seek escape from our everyday routines through relationship and a desire to have somebody else fix or change the places where we might feel bored or trapped or stuck in our lives. And while it can be really helpful to get support to work through our frustrations, trying to find personal freedom through another person may not be the most sustainable way of changing our circumstances. Oh, you're going to pull me out of this, you're going to rescue me, may not be incredibly sustainable. But this is a good day to try and shift these structures or routines that feel oppressive by trying to explore new ways of having fun. So do something different, go and explore, have an adventure, meet new people, look for something that excites your senses. You might be able to shift perspective through subtle activities instead of grand sweeping gestures where you just blow everything up. And you know what? If you want to blow everything up, I support that too. But try the subtle, more gentle ways first. Transit can also help to provide a new perspective as we learn to create a bit more space for what can feel good through engaging in new and novel experiences, which expand our perception of what is possible. And again, we don't have to totally break down old structures so that we can achieve this. We can just introduce new experiences that allow us to update what is possible and the ways that we can enjoy ourselves within the current structures. So this provides helpful information around what we want more of moving forward and what we want to move away from in the future. Okay, Sunday, November the 30th, we have Venus in Scorpio, trine Neptune retrograde in Pisces at 29 degrees and 24 arc minutes. I believe this is the last transit that we'll cover today. So, coming off of this opposition from to Uranus, which might excite us and activate us and make us want new things, Venus comes into a supportive trine with Neptune. And Neptune is a planet of imagination, fantasy, spirituality, and creativity. And while Uranus is very electric, Neptune is chill. It wants to sleep. It wants to dream. It sort of wants to be in a flow state. And I think that creativity is a great way of accessing a flow state. Venus is a very creative planet, loving beauty, and Neptune, brings this sort of higher level of creativity to the game. And so, working with these in the supportive aspect, making art, fantasizing, daydreaming, can be really helpful. And so Venus, who loves beauty, um, in this harmonious aspect with Neptune, this is a great time to engage in creative pursuits or to go take in aesthetic beauty. Looking at art or making art is a way of connecting in with the spirit, in my opinion. Um, Engagement with what we find beautiful can help us to sort of elevate our awareness today and to feel a connection with the divine. This transit also lends itself to daydreaming, fantasy, imagination. But Neptune can also be illusion or delusion. So we want to be aware that we don't get lost in a romantic fantasy and lose sight of what's actually happening in reality. But if we keep that in mind, this is a good day to allow the mind to wander and to rest in images or dreams in the imaginal space that we find very pleasurable. And this can also help us to develop a felt sense of what feels good and what feels joyful, which can be really helpful. Once we have a mental image of joy, it helps our system to know how to seek that out and what that feels like. Neptune can be a little escapist, and there's sometimes a thin line between escaping and escaping into fantasy and developing a mental image of what we want our lives to look like. So we don't want to abandon the present moment. We want to sort of enhance the present moment with our imaginations, with our, beautiful imaginal qualities. And also as we sort of create this imaginal vision that gives us something to orient towards. So again, we want to keep one toe in reality while allowing our minds to wander in order to create an image of what feels joyful and beautiful that we can practice seeking out in the future. This transit also helps us to feel more attuned to the people that we are close to. Neptune dissolves boundaries and brings with it the longing for union. So, this trine to Venus can help us to feel more in tune with those we are close to and provide more of an ability to be kind of synced up with others' feelings. However, don't forget the boundary work that we just did during that grand trine with Saturn and Jupiter. And we can consider the ways that we can sync up with others while maintaining our inner alignment and a strong sense of self so that we don't get swept up by the emotional waves that Neptune brings to the party and kind of abandon ourselves or become enmeshed. So we can consider how we allow ourselves to feel this sort of to feel these feels and to feel this connection without getting pulled out to sea and losing connection with our internal anchor that we were sort of developing with Saturn in Pisces or the trine to Saturn. And if we can hold both things, the sort of emotional connection to others or the attunement with others, and that sort of inner alignment or inner anchor, we are able to be, more synced up and more connected with others without abandoning our inner alignment with ourselves. Ah, and this is the last transit of the week. So also Saturday, November the 30th, we have Venus entering Sagittarius. Finally, so Venus going through all of these transits at the very end of Scorpio and the last decan of Scorpio in a sign of their detriment, finally sort of moving through this gauntlet and emerging from the deep pools of Scorpio into the excitement of Sagittarius. And so, one thing that we consider is how do we use the emotional information that we got from digging in the depths of Scorpio to inform what we are shooting for in the future? Sagittarius is an archer, and an archer wants a target. And, Venus has been doing all of this internal work in these depths of Scorpio, feeling the deep feels. And then as they emerge out, how does that support the things that we want to shoot for? How does it support the things that we want to go after? And how does this new information change or update how we orient ourselves to the targets we are shooting at and the truths we are trying to pursue? So, how did Venus time in Scorpio and the emotional information that we received from witnessing and untangling the emotional knots inform our relational dynamics and our value systems so that we can approach our life in a relationship with a deeper wisdom and a new understanding of what is true for us? And so, as this week unfolds, Venus again made a number of aspects, which may have revealed various aspects of the work that Venus was doing in Scorpio around emotional depth, safety, relational connection, and intimacy. And uh, we can look at this week as Venus getting an opportunity to update our attachment system and our values around relationship. And as we emerge from the deep waters of Scorpio and enter into Sagittarius, Venus can now use this information to inform the relational and aesthetic targets that we choose to aim at. Sagittarius is an adventurer, and the emotional update that Venus was involved in Scorpio helps us to have a better understanding of the adventures that we choose to embark on specifically in the Venusian areas of our life around beauty, pleasure, relationship, love, beauty, aesthetics, etc. And it also informs the quest for truth that is a core motivation of the Sagittarian archetype. And, again, I always think about that shift from Scorpio to Sagittarius, no matter who's going through it, as like emerging from this swamp and like running onto land and being like, oh my God, I'm getting out of there and I'm going after that. That looks exciting. That looks like it will be helpful. That's the thing that inspires me. And so, as Venus, again, this relational planet, this planet dealing with beauty and joy, kind of emerges from this deeper inner work, how do we implement that learning into our life? And how do we allow that to inform what we are questing after, what we are shooting for, what we are hungering for, and what inspires us? And how do we integrate that information in the steps that we take forward, in the targets that we choose to shoot at? In the things that we choose to go after. And with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell. And I hope you all have a great week in space. I'll stay on the Instagram a minute longer if folks have any questions that they want to pop in the chat. Um, yeah, and Jesse Brown saying Artex actually escaping the swamps of sadness. Yeah, you could think about a planet in Scorpio as being like sunk down in the swamps of sadness from the never-ending story, which is I don't know about y'all, but like that scene traumatized me. I'm still traumatized by it. Thanks, 80s movies. But yeah, as we are able to sort of untangle some of these knots, maybe we are less dragged down into the swamp of sadness and we can step out of it and use whatever helped to buoy us to orient us to the next adventure or the next quest or the truth that we are seeking. And I think the benefit of Scorpio is it really helps us to get in touch with that deeper truth, and so that we can then externalize that through Sagittarius season in taking aim at the target and being like, that is what's true for me. That's what I'm going after. But without doing that deeper work, it's really hard to know what is actually true and actually in alignment for us. So, anyway, thank you, Jesse Brown, for that callback to the never ending story and my childhood trauma. Cheers. Anyway, yeah, I hope you all have a great week in space. Again, I'm Joan Emerson Bell, tarot reader, astrologer extraordinaire. I also do astrological coaching, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor. If you are interested in a reading, hit me up on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard, or you can email me at campwizardcamp.com or go to my website. You all know how to use the internet. I believe you. And yeah. Also, tarot and astrology readings make great Christmas presents. Just saying. Anyway, until next time, my friends, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.